Go back to your own career, and for these next two questions, you don't have to name names. For one of them, you definitely won't want to name names. But for the first one, who's your best boss, and what was the reason for them being your best boss?
I guess my best boss was somebody that I looked up to in one of the groups that I was working with, that I spent 8 years working there. This was an individual who was the business leader and owner, and eventually sold out to a PLC. And the whole premise of all the training that anybody got in the business, regardless of what area of the business you worked in or what position, was around making sure you looked after the customer and around the attitude you had towards customer service. And that person's that person's approach, if you like, was all around the fact that if you look after the customer, the money will come as a byproduct of that. And actually, first and foremost, that's what you should do.
Yep.
Now, fast forward that to today, and despite everything we talk about in the industry, and no matter how complex it is or how complex we make it, it still boils down to that very premise of looking after the right people, looking after staff, looking after the customer, and everything else will follow. So he was an individual that was inspiring, and an awful lot of what we did in the entire group seems like really basic stuff, but to be able to do that consistently, day in, day out for a number of years, was really, really powerful. The worst experience was probably, and it was a very short experience for me, which was probably best for them and for me, was working for a PLC where on my first day of working there, the person I reported to told me that he would explain something to me twice and then he would tell a new man.
Wow.
Which was probably fairly typical for the era, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And typical of the size and scale of the group involved.
Yeah.
But it was a sentence that came out of the person's mouth which has never left me.
I can imagine.
And needless to say, I went home after that first night and thought to myself, what on earth have I done coming to work with this organisation?
In a way, though, I suppose, even though, like you said, that's probably your worst experience of a boss, we've spoken to other people who have said that their worst and best boss was actually the same person because they teach them something. Yeah. What did you learn from that experience?
Oh, as you'd expect, I learned an awful lot about how not to treat people, how not to look after people, and how not to train and coach and lead people.
Yep.
So, you could say the same in a lot of respects, in that it was a really, really good learning curve to be exposed to that environment. And in fairness, this was a person in terms of seniority where that type of management style cascaded to, middle and senior leaders in the business elsewhere.
Trickle down, yep.
Yeah, so it was an awful experience, but it was one that was great learning, as you say.
Yeah, you'll never forget those experiences. And lastly, what would you say to someone who's experiencing that with a boss? So if they're sitting here listening, thinking, yeah, that sounds like my boss, what would your advice be to them?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that not everybody's like that. So look outside of the immediate circumstances that you've got.
Yep.
Get into a network when you can work with like-minded people such as yourself.
Yep.
Surround yourself with people that you admire and respect. And take the current experience you're going through as really, really good learning in how to shape your own career to do things completely differently and turn it on its head. And then if it's an organisation you're in where that's the feeling that you've got, get out. They don't deserve you.
The world's bigger, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
Great advice.
Armchair Marketing.